What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in again to another episode of the Man Listen Show. Before we get started, let's hear a few words from our sponsors. Please buy the new book by Arika Nicole Moore, Diabolical Tales of Woe. Diabolical Tales of Woe is a thrilling collection of short horror stories that leave you in an excited trepidation to see what will happen next. Prepare to face one horrific encounter after the next in this captivating novel. You can find this book on Amazon in the Kindle and paperback version. That is Diabolical Tales of Woe by Arika Nicole Moore.
Moments matter. Make them timeless. For every celebration, every milestone, and every special moment, make it timeless with the rich, velvety smooth taste of Timeless Vodka. Make sure you check them out at www.timelessvodka.com.
I got to kick this thing off. Yeah. Can I kick it off? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Listen. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
Conversate with Us Radio presents the Man Listen Show. We are the blackest radio show on the internet. We bring you our opinion on topics that relate to the black community in an effort to enlighten, enrich, and empower every brother and sister that falls under the sound of our voice. We operate on a no-hating frequency, so be prepared for us to keep it 100% real and 100% black all the time. Please follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Man Listen Show. You can also subscribe to the show on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, basically anywhere you podcast. Please share the show and make sure you use the hashtag ManListen. I'm your host, Mar B. Let me go ahead and introduce the crew. C, what's going on now?
Hey, what's good?
Everything's good. Arika, how you doing?
I'm good. What's up?
Not much. And last but not least, my boy Lab. What's up, brother?
What's going on, brother, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. So today's a tough topic. We are talking about Ahmaud Arbery, a black man in Georgia who was killed doing what he loved. He was out running, and two white supremacists just outside of Brunswick, Georgia, tracked him down, which was called by some an attempt to conduct a citizen's arrest. They tracked down Mr. Arbery and shot him dead. Video of this attack, of this murder, has been circling on the internet, and outrage has been widespread. Many people across social media have been calling for justice for Ahmaud, rightfully so. And as of this recording, the two killers have just been arrested and charged with murder. You know, the black community has been going through a collective trauma with the whole COVID-19 and quarantine 2020. And the killing of Ahmaud really just threw salt on the wound. And we wanted to talk about this, give you our feelings. This will be probably a raw show because, you know, this is something that is, you know, frankly getting old and it's getting tiring. And people are becoming numb and exhausted to black men, black women being murdered by police, being murdered by white supremacists with seemingly no justice in sight. This murder happened over 2 months ago. And as of this recording, the killers were just now arrested. And had there not been somebody there to film this incident, we probably would never have known about it. Or there would only be one side of the story told. And we know that that wouldn't go good for Mr. Arbery. So we're going to talk about our feelings on this topic and give you the raw emotions. So we'll go ahead and start off with Arika. Arika, when you first heard about this, when you first read about what happened with Ahmaud, what were your thoughts?
Well, of course, like most people, I was outraged and heartbroken, especially for, you know, his family, but for all of us collectively, because we feel the pain of every person that we lose, that we create the hashtag so that they don't be forgotten in this whole you know American way of killing Black men and women senselessly, usually without coming to justice. I mean, it's been 2 months and nothing had happened. If it wasn't for everybody seeing the video, which I don't condone, and if there's ever a video of me being killed, please take it off the internet so my kids don't see it. But if that hadn't happened, if it hadn't been recorded, then who knows where we would be right now? Would it be news? Would we be, you know, calling the prosecutor's office and trying to get the GBI involved? I don't know. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like you don't want to keep putting, Black deaths into the mainstream media because it's degrading and it's disrespectful to people that we've lost, especially to the families. And even his own mother says she can't bring herself to watch it, obviously. But without it, it's hard to imagine that we'll find justice in this situation. And when you have prosecutors who take the stance that the person might have shot himself with a shotgun, and they twist the law in such a way that they can justify really anything, that's what makes people afraid of the law. It's because the people who wield that, who have the power to enforce the laws, they can twist things to make it tell the story that they want to tell. And that's unfortunate that sometimes we have prosecutors who, instead of letting a jury decide what happened and just following the charges, we instead have a prosecutor trying to save their friends and deny familial ties to people just so that they can save their friends from something that they probably feel is justified, because it's probably something he would have done himself too, which to me is why when I wrote my letters to the mayor and to the various people that I wrote to, I said I think every case that he's been involved in needs to be re-examined. Every case that he's decided not to call for needs to be re-examined. His entire career needs to be under a microscope now, because obviously this Barnhill guy is prejudiced, and he's right up there with the murders as far as I'm concerned. Because if you're not willing to prosecute a murderer, then you might as well be a murderer. I mean, in my book, you're complicit in the murders. And so you're a murderer. You should be in jail sitting right next to those two men who murdered that man while he was jogging.
So apparently they called into 911 and reported that he was on some property that he wasn't supposed to be on. And the 911 dispatcher was trying to figure out what exactly he did wrong to prompt that call. And the two murderers really didn't give us a good answer, but they armed themselves and started to follow after him. And Ahmaud was somebody that was known to jog in the neighborhood and to wave at neighbors. And, unfortunately, he was murdered, just trying to run and exercise in broad daylight. His mother said she watched him come into this world, and watching him leave this world was not something that she wanted to do. And honestly, I understand the value of having the video so the truth can be known, but I really didn't need to see it. Like I said earlier, we're going through a situation that has shook up America, and more specifically Black America, because we are being disproportionately affected by COVID-19. But to see him fight for his life, running in an open area, it wasn't like he was running from a store or running from somebody's house. It was an open area. And seeing him fight for his life and then take his last steps, it really just did a number on me. And we posted about it on our Instagram, paying our condolences, giving our thoughts about his killing. But I'll be honest with you, this one right here, I just didn't have the energy to speak out like I normally do. And I felt bad about it, but I just struggled with it. We went through Trayvon, we went through Sandra Bland, we went through so many people. Eric Garner, we went through John Crawford in Ohio. We went through Tamir Rice in Cleveland. I mean, the names, I'm not doing justice. Raquel Boyd. I can't name all the names to do them all justice. So for this to happen, and for another young brother who was running from the police and was unarmed and was shot down, and the police didn't know that he was on Facebook Live and it was still recording, and they callously made the joke it's going to be a closed casket for this one. You know, the disregard for Black life is just taking its toll on me. So that's how I responded to it. I'm definitely down for the cause, and I'm glad that they were arrested and that they were charged with murder. I hope it's not a situation, Enrique, you can speak more to this because you are a resident attorney. I hope this wasn't a situation where they were overcharged and they may be able to get off, but pictures have come out with them with the governor, Brian Kemp, with one of the killers wearing a Trump hat. So it's no shock what they did to that man. And I hope they get thrown under the jail. I don't know if Georgia has the death sentence, but they deserve it. That's just my opinion. So, Lab, what do you think, bro?
I'm I'm kind of like you. It was like the energy just wasn't there. It's almost like I'm not gonna say you've been beat down by looking at it so many times. I mean, it's a different video, a different place on the map, but it's the same thing every single time. One thing that it my thoughts immediately was like, man, I bet you that's almost exactly like Trayvon Martin, like what happened with him, but
Yep.
there just was no one there to record it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, on the other side of the recording, I said, man, cops get recorded doing this stuff all the time. So the badge is like a get out of jail free card, because we've seen cops do the same thing, if not worse, and they're always not charged. They were justified, fearing for their life, things like that. So it just brings to issue again that the black skin itself is, in this country, it is deemed as criminal. So no matter what you're doing, minding your own business, if I don't think you should be here, then you're all automatically up to something no good. You're automatically a criminal. You're automatically doing something you're not supposed to do. Therefore, you're probably someone I should fear. So I can do whatever I need to do, take the law into my own hands, and 99 times out of 100, I'll be backed up by the criminal justice system.
I'm waiting for Ahmaud to be put on trial because that's their typical playbook. When Trayvon was murdered, we saw the pictures of him and his dad, school pictures of Trayvon. But what happened? They talked about how he smoked weed, right? And they tried to criminalize him. When Tamir Rice was killed, they talked about how big he was for his age. I wonder how they're going to try to besmirch this man's name to try to justify what happened to him, because this isn't the first time where we've seen like on footage somebody just running and not posing a threat murdered. Y'all remember Walter Scott in South Carolina?
Walter Scott.
He was running away from
And
the
that was the
police,
cops, though. That's what I'm saying.
shot in the back.
Yeah. And then they planted a gun on him.
Planted a gun. Botham John, there was no video of that, and I bring Botham John up because I sincerely hope that Ahmaud's family does not get on any news channel, does not get in front of the court, and does not say, we forgive the people that murdered our son and our family member. I really hope that they stand tall and they don't do that. So, see, what were your thoughts?
I've seen a couple posts here and there on Facebook, but I really haven't read too much into it or even watched the video yet. Those videos really bother me, and it really bothers me that Facebook is just okay with letting them play over and over again. They mark so much stuff as insensitive. I have cousins that go to Facebook jail left and right. Like, the stuff they post is insensitive, but yet every time there's a Black man that's getting shot down, killed, that video just rides and rides for until people stop sharing it. In this situation, though, I will say that the video was almost warranted, because I don't think there would be any arrests, or wouldn't have protests, we wouldn't even know about it, and these guys would have got away with it. They still could potentially get away with it. I know everybody's pretty excited because they were recently arrested, but we've been here before. There's a lot of people that are arrested and charged and prosecuted, but what happens after that? and just like to kind of protect. I mean, I feel terrible for his family. Just to protect my own mental wellness right now, I just don't feel like I'm really in a space where I want to dig deep into that. Every time these situations happen, just being the mother of three black sons, it really bothers me. It really worries me. I read a couple articles yesterday, and even my son, when he went to take the dog out, it was dark, and I'm just like, what if somebody doesn't see the dog, or what if somebody just sees him walking by, in the neighborhood, and they don't know and they do the same thing. So just for, like I said, just for my own mental wellness, I haven't really checked so much into it. I'm always here for my people, though. I hope there's justice, but it just gets frustrated. I just had to step away for a while. Maybe next week or so I'll dive deep into it, share a few articles, cuss a few people out on social media, but right now I'm not.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with protecting your peace, because I think you mentioned Facebook allowing it to be shown when they flag so many other things that are insensitive. You're right. I really think this is sort of like, it's not sort of like, this was a modern day lynching. And just like the Mike Brown murder, right? When Mike Brown was murdered by the police and they let his body sit, without being covered, they let him sit. So all the people in the neighborhood, all the black people in the neighborhood could see what was done to him. That goes directly back to slavery and the trauma that they try to instill. So to let us know this could be you too. There's a purpose into why they do that, because it does give us trauma. So if you have to protect your peace, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I'll be honest with you, I was hesitant to do this show, just because I really didn't have it in me to talk about this topic again. But it had to be done. Justice needs to be had for Ahmaud, and we need to talk about this and empower our people. But Arika, what do you think about the DA waiting so long to charge him? I mean, you kind of talked about it earlier, but does that bode well for us getting justice for Ahmaud, or does it seem like some funny business will go on, like with the Mike Brown case when they try to choose the grand jury? Because I found it very funny that the DA tried to say, well, because of COVID-19 and the quarantine, we have to wait to summon a grand jury because it's not safe. But we all know that Georgia's been open for everything else. But you can't open for something as a black man being murdered.
Well, that's complicated because so the way they're opening things back up, we all have talked about this before. It's kind of like a you guys test it out for us first. So just because Georgia's opening back up doesn't mean the court has ruled that courts have opened back up officially. So it's still a cop out. It's definitely a cop out because I mean, if you can't convene a grand jury, then you just press charges. I mean, they get a lawyer, they go, they have the opportunity to do a preliminary hearing, which they can present their case pretty much to the judge in like a real informal type of like pre-trial type of deal to say, hey, I don't think they have enough evidence to charge me with this crime. So it's not like, you have to wait till the whole trial goes through to prove your innocence if you don't feel like there's enough evidence for that. Filing the charges is the least a prosecutor can do. That's like the bare minimum. Usually they don't even really think about it twice. If there's evidence and the police think that something was done, they're just like, boop, rubber stamp. Yeah, we'll file the charges. If they get a good lawyer, get it thrown out, then so be it. But this prosecutor demonstrated that he had no interest in pursuing charges with this case. I shared on my Facebook page, he wrote a 3-page letter that said that he felt like the autopsy report was consistent with the murderer's story. So then he outlined several laws that he felt like supported it. One of the laws that he discussed was the stand your ground. And I was like, well, how does stand your ground apply when you're chasing people down?
Right.
And so another law that he spoke on was that the right to carry. Basically, since these two murderers were not felons, it wasn't illegal for them to carry, and then they were carrying out in the open, so that should be acceptable. And then the primary one that I took issue with was he cited a law that basically gives citizens the right to make a citizen's arrest. Now, let's just be clear. If my black behind decides to citizens arrest somebody and I get shot, they're going to be like, she was tripping and she got shot. So the only people that can actually citizens arrest somebody is people with privilege, and that's white people anyway. So that's not even something that would be brought up if it was one of us. But he brought it up anyway. The law says that if I witness you committing a felony, then I can try to make a citizen's arrest or try to detain you, which basically means that it's the same as kind of like stand your ground in your home where you're able to protect your home. So if somebody breaks into my house and they're stealing my stuff, I can tackle them and hold them down until the police get there. Or like, let's say I'm out at the mall and somebody steals my bag, I can tackle them and call the police and hold them there until the police get there so that they don't get away. What this law does not mean is that people can say, hey, you look suspicious, chase you down in their trucks with armed rifles, and then confront you, question you, interrogate you. Like, citizens do not have interrogation and police authority. So the fact that he even tried to use this law to justify what they did tells you that his intention was to justify it. Whatever he had to say to justify it, that's what he's going to do. So I know that he's not interested in pursuing murder charges for these people. The pressure from the press and us and the NAACP and Sean King and whoever else is speaking on it is the only reason why charges have been brought against these men, because he basically said, not basically said, he literally said in this 3-page letter that it's unclear who fired the rifle at him. So we're not entirely sure that he didn't actually shoot himself with the rifle, because he could have, hit the trigger. Like, just let that sink in for a second. He's saying that these men ran up on him with rifles, confronted him about something while he's jogging, and that he should have stopped and answered their questions and had a conversation with these white supremacists holding rifles pointed at him. And then because he didn't do that, they were attacked by him by not responding, and then he could have shot himself in the skirmish. That's the most ridiculous story I have ever heard in my entire life. And to hear that from an attorney, and not just an attorney, but the prosecutor, it's frightening to me what other cases he's let slide. Because if you can make up some stuff like this and try to make this a justifiable homicide, I promise you right now, if I go outside with a loaded gun and chase down some white people and confront them for being outside without having seen them do any crimes, I just assume they're doing something wrong. Let's just say I'm like, oh, you look like you're out here doing meth or whatever, robbing houses. And then I confront them and shoot them. I'm going immediately to jail because, for one, why am I outside running around with a gun chasing people down? That's just common sense. And then for
especially in Georgia.
Right. And then for two, the thing about it that he didn't mention is your right to protect yourself in self-defense is a balancing act. So if you punch me in the face, I can't defend myself from you by shooting you in the head. That's not how the law works.
Right.
So if you punch me in the face, I can punch you in the face. If you get a bat, I can get a weapon, but it has to match. So you can't just run around saying, oh, he attacked me with his hands, so I shot him with a rifle. That's not how self-defense works. It just doesn't. It has to be like, it has to make sense. So if I'm a 100-pound woman and you're a 300-pound man, then yes, I might need a gun to defend myself against you, but you have to be able to justify the use of force. It's not something that can be readily used in self-defense. They're not just handing out self-defense excuses randomly and readily, unless of course
White.
You're a MAGA hat wearing scumbag.
But what tripped me out is I'm looking up Brunswick, Georgia, and I'm looking at the demographics of that town. 15,000 people. 59% of the population is Black. And it baffles me that we don't have a prosecutor in that town that, number one, looks like us, or number two, is has shown that they are more inclined to be on the side of justice than, because I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think this DA is probably a closet white supremacist too. I just believe so by the cockamamie story that he just made up that Erika told us. So
Right.
so with that being said, we've seen the power of the district attorneys, of the prosecutors, right? Michelle Alexander talked about it in The New Jim Crow, how they are the most powerful people in the justice system and how they have used that position to incarcerate us and to carry out the mission of mass incarceration. But in this case, they are using it for protection. And we've seen cities, St. Louis, Baltimore, Chicago, when there's a black face in the DA position, things change. And I hate that it's not like that right now, but hopefully the people in Brunswick will make a change based off of how the prosecutor has handled this case so far. The people in St. Louis did it finally, and hopefully they do it in Brunswick.
Right, but it took Mike Brown for St. Louis to wake up and vote in Wesley Bell. And I'm glad that it finally happened. I just wish that it had happened sooner. And maybe this is the wake up call Brunswick needs to get it together and start trying to really evaluate who's speaking for them, who's running their city, who's making these decisions.
It's ridiculous that
His
Bob
whole family is police officers.
It's ridiculous that he stayed in office as long as he did, with as many black people there are in St. Louis County. And when before the Mike Brown incident, a black woman, a Mizzou grad, Leslie Tolliver, ran against him, and black people didn't vote for her.
I did.
They did, but you know what I'm saying? So why did it take a murder of a young black man for people to get mobilized? I just, it's just exhausting. It just really is.
I was gonna say, Erika mentioned Sean King and whoever else is publicizing this, man. I think it was him. He put something and said, can you name one instance in American history where the opposite happened, where a group of black people just chased down a white person and shot him for no reason ever? I'm not talking about being prosecuted for it. I mean, just ever having it happen outside of slave revolt, that kind of thing. I mean, since 1900 or after post Civil War, that's never happened. Literally never.
Yeah, that was Sean King. I read that.
Yeah, and so it's just amazing. Like I said, it just reiterates, and I think it speaks to why there are a lot of black people, honestly, that don't vote. You do get beat down by just seeing story after story after story, and a lot of people are inclined to believe that nothing's ever going to change. I can't do anything to help the situation. It's always going to be like this. And so you get into the cycle and you just kind of become, I guess, apathetic and don't care,
And well, defeated. You've been defeated if you do that. And we can't do that, man. I like to go out at night and walk. It's, I live in Texas. Sometimes it's extremely hot, so nighttime is the best time to walk. My wife and kids have a dog, and it's my son's.
That's your
Who has a
dog
dog?
too.
Who
Right.
has a
That's your
dog?
dog.
Y'all got
Not
two
my
dogs
wife and
now?
kids.
Nah.
Did you just post about the dog getting a haircut?
What?
And every time they take a picture, Gucci's right there by him.
That my wife Gucci is my wife and
That's
kids'
his road dog.
But in all seriousness, that's one of my son's jobs. Like, hey, before it gets late, you take the dog outside, you walk him so he can handle his business, so we don't have anything happen in the house while we sleep. And my boy is 17, he's 6'3", 230. And I would like to think that all of our neighbors know who he is. But what if somebody, moves into the neighborhood and they don't? Or what if some cop is new to the beat and they see him walking and, like she said, they don't see the dog and they harass him, and then it's just one side, and God forbid something terrible happens. So it just makes me rethink how we're going to move as a family. I always carry some weapon with me while I'm out, but I probably need to carry something more lethal going on from this, because this is getting ridiculous, and something needs to change. And I don't know how it's going to happen, but whether it's through us mobilizing to vote or us taking a stand to stand up for ourselves and let them know that we won't just take it lying down, but something has to change.
I've heard people say this, and somebody said it the other day. The only way stuff like that's going to change, like gun laws and things like that, if you get a group of armed black people that show up on the scene, I guarantee you the open carry, the stand your ground, all that. When black people start utilizing those, as far as protests and things like that go, if you had a group of armed black people that showed up to the state house in Georgia, guaranteed that they call for some kind of action on open carry or anything like that.
I was gonna say, actually a lot of black people do open and carry and conceal and carry and stuff like that too. What we don't do is carry the assault rifles and go up to the Capitol and things like that. But if we are gonna do it, now's the time to do it, considering they've been doing it for a whole month.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm not talking about handguns necessarily, but with the rifles,
Yeah.
the ARs and whatever's, yeah, shotguns, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because
yeah, make it
I
be
read
seen.
historically, really, there was not like you look at California, they said they really, they have pretty strict laws. They didn't have the gun laws until the Black Panthers started showing up
Right.
with the rifles and congregating. So
yeah, because that's
Ronald Reagan hung his hat on that, boy.
Right, because that's when Bobby Seale and a few of the other Black Panthers were arrested because they walked into the state senate with guns, and that was illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But just in Charlotte, you talk about that, Lav, and this man's name was I apologize if I don't pronounce it right, but Dankiers Napoleon Franklin, 27 years old, in Charlotte, North Carolina, had a pistol on his side. He was stooped down by his car. The police pulled up on him and told him to drop his weapon. And as soon as he reached to drop his weapon, they shot him dead. His last words were, "You told me to put it." And they shot him. So even if, and this is an open, and North Carolina is an open carry state. So even if the law is on our side, the way that it's applied, it still won't benefit us. It still won't. You know what I mean?
They always fear for their life when it's us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, there's really no pleasant way to end this show, but we felt it was necessary as the blackest radio show on the internet to talk about it. I want to encourage everybody to, if you have it in you, to speak up for the black men who were killed: Ahmaud Arbery, Dankiers Napoleon Franklin, and Sean Reed, who was murdered by the police while he was unarmed. Our thoughts go out to their families, and our thoughts go out to our listeners, because this is a tough time. And I don't know if you can tell, but we as a crew are kind of shook up about it as well, because it's something that is trauma. It's trauma, and it's hard to process, and it's difficult, but we have to keep up the fight. We got to keep pushing through. We got to keep making sure that their names aren't forgotten and that justice is served. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Make sure you follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Man Listen Show. And make sure you subscribe to the show on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and anywhere else you podcast. We'll holler at you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.